Hey, thanks so much for joining me on Between the Two of Us, a mental health podcast. I'm your host, Jen Alley, a licensed professional counselor, wife, and mom. In this podcast, we will talk about modern day life as it relates to your mental health. Drawing on my professional experiences of being a therapist the last 14 years, my background in education, and my personal experiences, I want to help you feel less alone in your struggles while teaching you what I wish everyone knew about brain science and mental health. While this podcast isn't therapy, I will offer practical tools and strategies grounded in neuroscience to improve your relationships, life, and mental wellness. Thanks so much for listening. Grab your cup of coffee or your walking shoes, and let's get started. Hello, friend, and welcome back to Between the Two of Us. This is your host, Jen Alley. Just a little disclaimer, I'm a little congested, and so I sound a little funky today. Might be clearing my throat a bit, so I apologize in advance for that. I wanted to talk today about something I am not very good at, and that is rest. And I think for me, that comes from a long line of doers and people who are very productive. Most of the women in my family, my mom, her mom, very busy, always doing something. And I think we also live in a culture that really values success and checking to-do items off and productivity. And of course, with our work and our lives largely being on our phones and on our computers that are available to us all of the time, I think it's easy to feel pressure to be working or responding or, replying, even if it's not work related, around the clock. And I find for myself that even if I do have a free moment, whether it's in line or at home, that it's easy to shift into just, scrolling mindlessly. And while I think scrolling can feel like a break because it helps us numb out and kind of move away from life stressors, it also causes us to absorb a lot of the sensory input that we're taking in from the phone. And it causes our brains to continue, quickly trying to process all the information. And so it really doesn't give us this thing that we need, which is rest. And I'm not talking about sleep today as much. I'm more talking about resting while we are awake. So the definition of rest is to cease work or movement in order to relax, to refresh oneself, or to recover strength. And, rest can look different for everyone. But I think what we want to focus on for rest is when it takes us to a state of being present, but not in a state of doing or worrying or planning. It's not task oriented. It's not focused on what needs to be done. So rest is a time where we let our mind wander. We shift from what's external to maybe what's more internal. We become less task or goal oriented, and we're just allowing our brain to take us where it wants or needs to go. It can be time where we just daydream or self-reflect. We move away from processing information or really doing, right? It's a state of being, not doing. And we have to be present in this state of resting to experience the benefits. In other words, if I am sitting on the couch, not physically doing anything, but my mind is still planning and thinking of what's next and organizing, that's not a restful state. Yes, I might be resting my body, but I'm not actually allowing my brain to rest. So let's talk about why we would want to do this. Why is rest important? The American Psychological Association says that rest helps reduce depression, stress, and anxiety. We also know that rest leads to improved performance, so we won't be so burned out, right? When we're burning the candles at both ends and we're constantly working, people are reporting so much stress and so many feelings of burnout. It helps us to be more creative, to have more access to problem solving, to be able to concentrate more. It can boost our energy levels. It can help us to feel more satisfied and fulfilled. And I think about that, and it's kind of like, the whole metaphor of pouring from an empty versus a full cup, right? When we're going, never enough, right? We can feel really drained and we might not be giving the task or our family or whatever we're doing our best. And so this rest helps kind of recharge our battery, so to speak. So the type of rest that is helpful for us might differ. And so I want you just to think for a second, like what helps me to shift from a state of doing and absorbing to a state of turning inward to my own thoughts, body, and feelings? What helps me to be present or just to allow my creativity and my mind to wander? So for me, as I said before, I am definitely a person who struggles with this. What feels good is often to be checking things off the to-do list and to be productive. But I know that when I take this time, it is so beneficial and I feel rested, I feel recharged and restored after. So in general, I think for me, there's something about sitting outside. I can sit on my patio and just kind of look out into, we back up to some green belt, just like looking out into the trees, listening to the birds. There's something really helpful, just kind of zoning out and like listening to the noises that can be really useful for me. Also, for me, I think walking meditation is helpful. But again, whatever we're doing, we have to allow our brains to get out of the task mode where we're planning and organizing and worrying and thinking. It's like just allowing our brains to wander. So, examples for you might include watching the sunrise or the sunset, perhaps drawing or painting or journaling or meditating, practices like yoga where you can get into a deep state of flow, walking in nature, progressive muscle relaxation, breathing exercises, visualization exercises. Also, things that are repetitive in motion like running or swimming or walking too, right? These can provide a meditative experience, allowing our minds to wander freely as our body is moving. So I also, for those of us who maybe struggle with this, I wanted to tell you some things that I tell myself. So some like cognitive things that maybe help me to be able to move more into a state of rest and to give myself permission for that. So number one, I think this is helpful, is like good enough has to be good enough. In other words, like I'm not superwoman. I can get a lot done, but like I I don't benefit from being in perfectionist mode all the time, and what can I let go of and what can be good enough. Number two, I've learned to identify the top 3 tasks of the day. Of course, if you have a huge task, then there's maybe only one, but it's kind of like, what are the 3 most important things I need to focus on today? Because you know what? We live busy lives and we'll never get everything done. There's always more to do. So if I feel like a failure every time I don't get my to-do list done, well, my to-do list is always growing, right? And so between work and a family, all the extracurriculars, school stuff that comes in, right? There's always something to do. The house, right? The house in and of itself takes a lot of work and upkeep. Laundry, right? The never-ending laundry. Everyone's always wearing clothes around here. And so their laundry is never completely done. I'm glad they're wearing clothes, but you know what I mean? So there's always stuff to do. So what are my top 3 tasks? Let me focus on those. And then that is success, right? If I can get, whatever my top, 1 to 3 things done. Number 3, a good reminder is that you will be more able to produce and also to feel good while doing it if you take time for true rest. Number 4, it might be uncomfortable at first if you rarely spend time with your own mind and your thoughts. It might be that difficult emotions come up and you might want to avoid that and immediately grab for your phone. But we want to practice not judging these feelings, but just being curious. And if we can, even compassionate toward those feelings that are coming up. If you need some support around this, then you might want to seek counseling, right? If you're finding that when I try to not be productive and just be in doing mode, I start to have a lot of difficult emotions. You also can listen to episode 6 on Between the Two of Us, which is on emotions, or episode 4, which is about self-compassion. And then number 5 for another mental practice or mindset shift that I remind myself of is that productivity isn't just about getting results. It's about getting the best results that I can. And when I'm rested, when I'm recharged, it will actually help me to do better, to feel better, to be more creative. So let's talk about what are our key takeaways for this. Number 1, identify what feels like rest to you. And again, side note, it's not just like binging on Netflix or on your phone. And I'm not saying that those things are bad, but those things are not usually allowing your mind a break. So remember, rest is a mindfulness practice, and we can be doing anything and still trying to work in our brain. So it's really about, how do I allow my brain to to wander? How do I allow my brain just to kind of be at ease? Number 2, we're going to schedule rest like you schedule everything else. I am not good at this, so I am also going to be working on this alongside of you, where I specifically put some rest time in every day. Now, we might start small, right? We might be like, okay, for 3 minutes, I'm just going to allow my brain to wander. But it might take us some time to get into it, right? And we might even start with some deep breaths. Remember, if you need some movement to add to that, you can get outside and go for a walk. But again, I'd recommend leaving the earbuds home and just allowing your mind to wander. Number 3, we want to try to get at least 15 to 20 minutes a day of rest in. Number 4, identify how long you can be focused and productive before your attention begins to wane. So if you are a person who is working inside or outside of the home, notice, like, how long can I be working on this task? And then how do I schedule a brief rest break into that? So for some people, it might be like, okay, for 90 minutes, I can focus pretty intensely and then I need a break. We do know that about 4 hours of intense work per day that really requires a lot of brain power is all we can do. Now, that's not to say we can't do more, easier tasks for our brain, but about 4 hours of like intense focus is about what we can do. And number 5, if your phone might be a distraction to you, silence it and put it in a different room while you're resting, or in a drawer, so you can truly let yourself rest. And remember, you are a human being, not a human doing. Okay, I hope you found something useful from today. I want to know what you are doing to rest. As a reminder, you can find the show notes at www.jenalley.com. You can also find them wherever you listen to this podcast. Please follow me at jen.alley.therapist on Instagram. If you have a suggestion for the show or something you want to hear about, I'd love to hear about that. You can email me at jen@jenalley.com. Please be sure to share this episode with a friend or someone who you think needs to hear it, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. The most helpful thing you can do if you are enjoying this podcast is to leave a review. And the reason for that is it helps more people to find the show, and it helps us to be able to keep it going. So thank you so much for listening today, and I will look forward to seeing you back here next time. All right. Thanks so much.